Hey everybody, we're back with another video on the Bad Batch, and I'm excited to talk about the Clone Underground and the Shadow Troopers, which are really interesting concepts. And so today I'll be breaking down both episodes 6 and 7 called Infiltration and Extraction, which were both released on Wednesday. So the Clone Underground is a concept that was introduced in season 1 when Captain Rex, who, if you watched the end of the Clone Wars, we saw that Ahsoka was able to remove the chip in his head. So he was able to go rogue. And throughout seasons 1 through 3 of the Bad Batch, we've learned that he maintained some connections among the clone army. And so he had some spies in the Empire, but he was also helping clones get out, clones who wanted to defect as they saw what was happening to their kind in the Empire, as higher-ups like Admiral Rampart wanted to phase out the clones in favor of a conscripted human force, which we all know to be the Stormtroopers. And in fact, there was actually a conspiracy where Admiral Rampart destroyed Kamino and the cloning facilities in order to engineer a situation where the newly formed empire would need a force to protect themselves, and with the clones no longer a viable option because they would no longer be able to grow more clones, they would now have to turn to a conscripted force. This scenario also caused Senator Chuchi of Pantora to decide to fight for clone rights as there was really no concrete plan on how to phase them out and what would happen to them afterwards. And of course, that saw clones like Slip, who tried to blackmail Rampart and show evidence of what he did to Kamino and decided to defect, but ended up being assassinated by a Shadow Trooper. And by this point, Rex has gathered at least 10 or so clones, some of which we have seen and were introduced in the Bad Batch. Obviously, Echo has been working with him, and Echo we know from the Clone Wars series. Echo stopped permanently working with the Bad Batch towards the end of season 2, and has been working with Rex and the Clone Underground since then. And in fact, they recruited the Clone Commando Gregor back in season 1, and they ended up saving clones like Hauser in season 2, who was a former ally to the people of Ryloth during the Clone Wars. Watching the Clone Wars, I never would have suspected that Captain Rex would become the Harriet Tubman of the Clone Underground, but that's exactly what he is. And in episode 6, he and his group are facilitating a meeting between two senators. One is Senator Chuchi from Pantora, and the other is the senator from Raxus, who in season 2, I believe, season 1 or 2, had to be taken from his home planet as he wasn't willing to acquiesce to the demands of the Empire, who wanted to bring Raxus into their fold, as he was a separatist senator. So he was part of the Separatist Alliance during the Clone Wars. And given the fact that the Separatists thought the Republic was corrupt, he has even greater reason to stand against the Empire now that they're more openly oppressive. And this gives him reason to meet with and ally with Senator Chuchi, who was a former Republic senator. So you have these two enemies who are now friends because of the oppressiveness of the current empire. But during this meeting, another Shadow Troop attempts to assassinate the two senators. But not only are Rex and his crew able to stop the Shadow Trooper, but they're able to capture him without him killing himself. Because in season 2, Rex captured a Shadow Trooper, but didn't realize that they have a means of suicide, which is they have a fake tooth, which when they bite down on, basically electrocutes them and kills them. Much like in spy thrillers, where a spy has a poison capsule in their teeth. But they were able to surgically remove the capsule, and therefore giving themselves an opportunity to interrogate the clone. Now, the clone doesn't give them any information, and what they're looking for is how to find Tantiss, which is where they know clones are being kept and converted into these Shadow Troopers. They know this information likely from the Bad Batch, as Omega and Crosshair both escaped from Tantiss. But on this Shadow Trooper, they find that he has a puck, which had the assignment for killing the senators, but also has Omega. And we know from the last few episodes that Dr. Hemlock is looking for Omega, because her DNA is compatible with midichlorians, which is part of Project Necromancer, which is the project that the Emperor is using to try and clone himself for the future. And we know that doesn't really work out exactly, but at this point, that's still his stated goal. But the Shadow Troopers, as we know, and as is explained by Crosshair in this episode, were regular clone troopers who were brainwashed at Mount Tantiss and put into a covert ops program where they go on special assignments like assassination, or in the case of Omega, the acquisition of special subjects. And from what Crosshair says, he was not susceptible to the brainwashing. So unlike the brain chip, which enforced Order 66 and worked on Crosshair at the beginning, he was apparently not susceptible to the brainwashing and did not become one of these shadow troopers. So if you watched episodes 1 and 2 and you saw Crosshair being led around in a line with other clones who all looked very despondent and run down, they were going through that brainwashing process. But Rex invites the Bad Batch to their secret base, not only to gain intel on Mount Tantiss, but also to let them know that Omega is currently being tracked by the Empire. Now, I forgot to mention that this base is on the planet Teth, and it's actually the Balmoran Monastery, who, if you don't remember, was actually the place where Asajj Ventress held, I think, the son of Jabba the Hutt. I can't remember his name, but I think it was the son of Jabba the Hutt in the original Clone Wars film that started all this off. So that's kind of an interesting Easter egg. But when the Bad Batch arrives, some of the clones, especially Hauser, are distrustful of Crosshair. And if you remember from Season 2, Hauser ended up defecting but was taken in by the Empire on the orders of Crosshair. And I'm sure that a lot of these clones in the underground are aware of what Crosshair did to the Bad Batch and some other defectors during his time serving the Empire. Unfortunately for Rex, Omega and Crosshair aren't able to give them much intel because Omega is aware that the M count is the reason that Hemlock wants her back, but she doesn't know what M count means, and even though Rex recognizes the term, he doesn't remember where it's from. And thinking back, I have trouble remembering where he would have heard it, unless he heard someone like Anakin or Obi-Wan Kenobi talking about it, or possibly a Kaminoan scientist. But Crosshair does reveal that holding the Shadow Trooper is dangerous, and that the Empire is likely on their way because he has a special type of tracker that you wouldn't be able to scan for. And that's when another Shadow Trooper infiltrates the base. The Shadow Trooper was activated by Scorch, the clone commando who seems to have a high-ranking position within Mount Tantiss. And he's able to easily infiltrate the base, kill the captured Shadow Trooper, and attempts to kill Rex. And while he fails, he is able to kill a number of the other members of the Clone Underground, leaving only 2 or 3 besides Rex and the Bad Batch. And so Rex and the crew attempt to make their escape. However, the Shadow Trooper calls in Commander Wolffe and a number of clones and a clone commando. And Commander Wolffe, I believe, was introduced all the way back in Season 1 of the Clone Wars. He was the clone captain or commander, I can't remember which one, who served under Jedi Master Plo Koon. And I knew that they were going to bring him into the Bad Batch at some point because he is one of the 3 clones who aids the Ghost crew in Star Wars Rebels. It's him, Rex, and Gregor, the clone commando. So Wolffe and the clones arrive at the base, and Wolffe chastises the Shadow Trooper for almost killing Omega because obviously Omega is the top priority at this point. So Wolffe is trying to go by the book and trying to cut off the escape of the clones, while the Shadow Trooper goes back into the base, ends up fighting Crosshair in a stairwell, and Rex and the crew try to escape in a shuttle, but the Shadow Trooper is able to fire at the engines and take it down. And it's while Rex and the Bad Batch are traveling through the jungle and heading to another extraction point where Hauser and another clone begin to trust Crosshair more because they see how he acts around Omega, how he is protective of her. And there was actually a point early in the 6th episode where the Bad Batch is in their ship, and you see Crosshair chewing on a toothpick, which is a habit of his, and you look over and Omega is also chewing on a toothpick. So she's kind of doing the thing that younger siblings will do, where they'll either consciously or unconsciously start to mimic the behaviors of an older sibling, which is pretty interesting that they already have that kind of relationship despite not knowing each other for that long. But Crosshair also explains that he realizes he was wrong siding with the Empire, that he believed in loyalty, and it turned out that the Empire didn't feel the same way. And although he doesn't say it, it likely implies that he regained a sense of loyalty from the Bad Batch, not only because of them wanting him back throughout Seasons 1 and 2, but also because Omega was willing to help save him and not leave him behind when she escaped Mount Tantiss. But Rex and his crew end up ambushing an Imperial patrol, and Crosshair tells the rest of the group to go ahead while he faces off against the Shadow Trooper in like a sniper standoff, which is kind of cool. But their fight ends up becoming a hand-to-hand fight, and they take it all the way into a waterfall where they fall off one waterfall and are fighting on the plateau of another. And what's interesting is that Crosshair is basically fighting what he would have become if he had stuck with the Empire. In fact, the Shadow Trooper even tells him that you should have stuck with us, that you should have become one of us. And the Shadow Trooper manages to get the upper hand on Crosshair and almost kills him until Hauser saves him. So it's kind of a full circle moment from their meeting in episode 6, where Hauser distrusted Crosshair completely, to now he sees him as another brother, another clone. But once they reach their extraction point, they realize that the ship that is there to meet them is not actually Echo, but it's in fact Commander Wolffe. Except that Commander Wolffe didn't realize that Rex was leading this group. He and Rex go way back, again, to the Clone Wars series, and Rex is able to convince Wolffe to let them go. He appeals to their common brotherhood as clones. He appeals to the fact that he believes Wolffe is a good man, and that, he tells him that you're trying to capture a child, which is obviously wrong. And while Wolffe doesn't decide to go with them and fight against the Empire, he does seem to realize that maybe he's not completely on the right side, because he allows them to leave, and he even orders his men to gather up the remains of Rex's fallen clone comrades, as he says they're clones too, so they deserve that much. But one of the biggest things that happen in this episode is that the Shadow Trooper that fought Crosshair survived. When he was stunned by Hauser, not shot with a full-on blast, he fell off the waterfall, and Rex and his crew thought he was dead, and Wolffe and his crew thought he was dead, but he survived. And I've talked about this a lot. I think this Shadow Trooper is actually Tech, and that he was brainwashed and became one of these Shadow Troopers. Because we know from the finale of season 2 that Hemlock and his clones found Tech's body. They had his goggles, and it's not so far-fetched that Tech survived the fall, and I believe that this is him. Because there's no way they would allow this guy to survive if he was just another nameless clone that was brainwashed. This is somebody important. It's either Tech, or I don't know, maybe it's somebody like Commander Cody, because he did go AWOL in season 2, but I don't believe Rex has mentioned him as being part of the underground yet. So it's possible that the Empire captured Commander Cody. But I think this is really interesting. And there's an episode coming up called Identity Crisis. And if that's not where the identity of the Shadow Trooper is revealed, if it's not revealed before that, then I guess this clone is just nobody, but I'm willing to bet it's Tech. I think he's going to continue his mission to try and find Omega. The Bad Batch are going to capture him, realize it's Tech, and try to basically bring him back. Because he's brainwashed, I'm not sure how they'll accomplish that, but it's the Bad Batch. I'm sure they're not going to leave one of their members behind. But these were 2 really good episodes, and even though this is a good season, I kind of wish they just released the whole thing at once. Not because the pacing is bad, but just because it's the final season. We kind of know what's going to happen in a general sense, because we know the future of the franchise. So there's not a whole lot of big secrets that are going to come out of this that are going to change the Star Wars franchise forever. I think they could have just given us the whole season at once. But let me know what you guys think about episodes 6 and 7 of The Bad Batch in the comment section below. As always, if you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it if you would hit that like and subscribe button, as well as the notification bell so that you never miss out on a new video. Thanks for watching.